Hi, I'm Jay Gruenke from the Balanced Runner System. I've been helping runners from beginner to Olympian improve their form and performance since 2003. And I'm here today with another stuck-at-home running form tip from my living room to yours, helping you use this time to become a better runner. So I spoke the last 5-6 days about how to run faster, and now it's time to talk about how to run slower, because you don't always want to run fast. You want to be able to control your speed overall, and it's really important to be able to run at an appropriate speed for a recovery run. And then if you're doing MAF training, for instance, or even any kind of heart rate training, to be able to slow down to hit the pace that you're trying to hit for those purposes, super important. So how do we flip around all the things that I told you will speed you up for slowing you down? And to begin with, the most powerful things that you can do to slow down are literally to flip all the speed up stuff on its head. And this is still worth talking about because running slower is a higher skill than running fast. It's harder to run with good form slowly because speed and momentum will tend to pull your body into a better organization. They don't necessarily change your muscle action, how you're initiating movement, so you can end up paying the price later if you're bringing bad form to fast running. But even if you look okay when you're running fast to an outside eye, but you don't even have that working for you when you run slowly. You really need to be able to organize your movement very, very well. And so for that reason also, I feel like it's an important skill for every runner to work on, because it will improve your running overall in a way that fast running doesn't. So to run faster, you need to lean more and move your face forward. So we talked about that right off the bat last week. And so to run slower, one of the most powerful things is to lean forward less and move your face back a little bit. And so the devil is really in the details here. Leaning forward, one of the effects of leaning forward is that it lengthens your stride, right? You're at if you lean forward only a little bit and you bring your leg up, it goes down about here. If you're leaning more, that same action is a much bigger leg movement. And that is quite visibly a longer stride length, though it's not the only thing, of course, that lengthens stride. So if you're running slower, you're going to want less of a stride length. So you're going to lean much less, maybe only slightly, depending on how slowly you're trying to run. You'll always lean a little bit. You may not even be completely sure whether you're leaning, but there will always be some lean there, even at very, very slow speeds. So moving your face forward, sliding your head forward, that I've spoken about so many times, where the skull slides on the atlas vertebra, so that when the spine is on a forward angle for a forward lean, the head is free to look around, is oriented to the horizon. Just got back from the dentist, had a nice long conversation with the dentist about how that also opens the airway, which anyone who's ever been trained in CPR also knows. It's the first thing you do before you blow. You open the airway, or you do a jaw thrust to open the airway. Anyway, you need less of all of that, of course, if you're running slower. So your head will not... You will not be moving your face so dynamically forward. Moving your face forward and back is like your foot pressing the accelerator or easing up. So you want to ease up on that when you're running slower without retracting your head. If moving your face forward isn't easy enough for you to do, then you might be doing it kind of hard, with too much tension, fighting the tension that's trying to pull it back. And in that case, when you stop, contracting muscles to push your head forward, it may retract. And I'm not talking about a head that retracts. You want your head always to go with your spine. And so this is the tricky bit is every time you move your head a little bit forward or a little bit back, it should cause your whole relationship to gravity to change. It should cause you to sway forward or back, right? So I'm initiating this movement of swaying forward by just thinking about moving my head forward. But you don't see me doing this because I'm organizing myself so it affects my whole body. It actually becomes a movement in my ankle joints. And that's what you need. That again is like, this is a higher skill. Fast, a little bit slower, right? So maybe you want to be about here for a very slow MAF run. Maybe you want to be more like here for a tempo run. And then, of course, you're going to be adjusting that continuously with wind resistance and to some extent with whether you're going up or downhill. It's like a horse, let the reins out for running fast, pull them back for running slow. But what you don't want to do is faster running, slower running. You see how my pelvis didn't move back. It stayed the same, and instead my lower back arched. So this is the thing that you need to learn in order to be able to easily control your speed, is to have this movement of the head be very easy and free so that it affects your whole body. For cyclists or triathletes, because of the time on the bike, that can be more difficult often than for other people, because on the bike you become used to just lifting the head, right? And so and using the muscles in the back of the neck and having that be an independent of any other body movement. So that's where a learning process is so critical, and not just the intellectual understanding. So in the description below, after I'm done here, I'm going to put another link to Eyes While Running, which is a great lesson for helping you free your head a bit and make this forward and back movement easier. It's quite brief, and you can actually do it while you're running, but you'll get instructions, follow them carefully. And then also I get a lot of questions about lean and how to know if you're leaning the right amount, and how to control your lean, and how to improve your lean. And fundamentally, that's a question of flexor and extensor balance in the torso. And are your flexors contracting and overpowering? They're contracting more than your extensors, in which case you're going to balance yourself like this in gravity without a forward lean. Or are your extensors overworking, in which case you're going to be lifting your chest and you're not going to be leaning forward? Or do you have a balance in between and you get your counter rotation, in which case and with a free head as well and enough ankle mobility, your nervous system is going to sense the necessity for a forward lean and simply choose it, is how that normally works. So yeah, and I'd made earlier videos on troubleshooting your forward lean, so you can look at those. But fundamentally, you may really need a learning process if leaning isn't easy for you, or if you don't have this easy relationship between your head and the rest of your body. So in addition to Eyes While Running, in the description below, I'm going to put a link to my best free resource for working on your core action and balancing out the tension in your flexors and extensors, and that's going to be helpful with your leaning. And then also go back and look at all my videos on lean earlier on in the series. So that is what I have for you today. I'll be talking a little bit more about finer details in the coming days about running slowly, but if you only know one thing about controlling your speed, it should be that. I have a question here from Adelino. Hello, Jay. 9.21 mile pace on MAF training at 174 Average stride rate, too high for that speed. Still have a small impression of face plant on the hills, but I feel more hip movement. That's good. I mean, so yeah, your stride rate is going to go down when you run slower. That it's just, it's a myth that 180 footfalls per minute should be a universal stride rate. Alex Hutchinson did a really good article on this, looking at the research and then his own data on himself, and it showed pretty convincingly, and I see it all the time in myself and my clients, that stride rate varies with speed, and your stride rate as well as your stride length will be lower when you run slower. And 9:21. I mean, again, Adelino, I don't like their general trends, but like I don't really know. I haven't seen you run. I think that still sounds a bit high, but I would, your best way to evaluate this is not to micromanage the different variables, but since you're doing MAF training, and MAF, for anyone who doesn't know, MAF, maximal aerobic function, a method developed by Phil Maffetone. So if you're curious more about that, look into it. That is beyond the scope of this video, except to identify it. But, if you're doing MAF, then you're monitoring your heart rate. And so you should actually let your heart rate be feedback for you on your learning process with your form. Because when your form improves, you should see your speed improve at that heart rate. So experiment with that. Yes, I think that still sounds a little bit high, but you're going to, experiment and keep an eye on your heart rate and see what happens. Pat says, I know this is not related, but do you have recommendations for sleeping position for posture? Pat, actually, I don't. I can just tell you that you're going to fall asleep in the position that's most comfortable for you, in which you're most able to relax, and that's related to your movement habits. And that when people do, for instance, a series of Feldenkrais lessons and their movement habits shift, then often they find that their sleeping position also changes and their overall ability to relax also improves. And so, I'm not a subscriber to this, one optimal position thing, but you do want to have your movement habits not make it hard for you to get to sleep at night. Let me see. Yeah, even still, Adelino, I would need to see you run. I think you should just use your heart rate as feedback. And definitely make sure that you're working on making these changes by doing some Feldenkrais lessons rather than consciously manipulating these variables as your sole mode of learning, because that also can end up raising your heart rate. It depends on how you're making the changes. Are you making changes by adding tension or by getting rid of tension that was getting in the way? And a lot of people, have no pathway to improving their form out of conscious information, like what I'm giving you here, other than to try harder somewhere in their body, right? And that's always going to make you work harder. But if you're doing Feldenkrais lessons, what you're doing is you're feeling where effort can be decreased, and where you have been making effort all along that was never necessary and always got in the way. And you stop doing that, and then your heart rate comes down, your speed goes up, you feel great, and something like your stride rate optimizes itself. I mean, I don't actually recommend that people run with a metronome or try and aim for a particular stride rate, and partially that's because, of course, it varies with speed, so setting a metronome is not going to be helpful with that, but also because you want your nervous system to be optimizing that. It can't be done particularly well consciously. You need your subconscious brain. You need, the much larger part of your brain, their processing power, that is responsible for coordinating your movement all the time, even when you're not paying attention, to be responsible for regulating your stride rate. Hope that's helpful. I hope that's helpful. And I hope that's helpful for everybody, just in terms of how to think about, well, what does make better form? And like, these parameters are their data. They can tell us some things. They give feedback, but trying to move individual ones of them, like levers on a control panel, actually seldom brings great results. Even if it did need to shift that direction, what you want to do is educate your nervous system so that it spontaneously regulates this stuff. And all you have to think is faster, slower, and everything just happens. I hope that's helpful. Marco, stride rate tends to diminish with fatigue. In that case, do you advise to consciously increase it towards the normal rate? That would be, no, unless you're like, it's a race, or you did an out and back run and you've got to get home, and you need some way to keep yourself going and keep your speed up, then you can try bringing your knees forward a little more quickly, or increasing your stride rate a little bit, as just like a practical measure in that moment. But, otherwise, no, I think you should let your system handle it. You're welcome, Adelino. You're welcome, Pat. Marco, with too high of a stride rate, the tendons and the leg do not have time to load energy to release afterwards. Yes, I think that's probably true, but I don't know numbers on that. So again, if you're letting your nervous system just optimize this for you, it's never going to select too high of a stride rate for your tendons to work properly, because that's going to be part of the feedback mechanism that you're using to optimize your stride rate. Yeah, Marco. So yes, in that case, as you're fatiguing, then yeah, you can increase your stride rate a little bit, bring your knees forward a little more quickly, and that can help you keep going and hold your pace if you're struggling at that point. All right. So it looks like that's all the questions. Thank you guys for the great questions, or folks, I suppose I should say. And yeah, we'll finish here. So thank you so much for watching. If you found this video valuable, please hit like, and that way YouTube knows that it's a good video, and they'll share it with more runners who need this information. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Definitely go get the lessons that I'm posting below, and check out all the other great resources that I have for you on balancedrunner.com. And I will see you tomorrow.